Good evening, traders. Welcome to the CloudChartist weekly Ichimoku wrap for the week ending February 27th. It's March 1st tonight. We're going to start off with the CL weekly. We see that CL made an attempt to close above the Tenkan-sen and failed by just a few ticks. Tenkan-sen's at 49.66 and the candle closed at 49.52. So it will be really important to see whether or not we can get back over this 49.66 level. If so, chances are we will continue higher towards the Kijun-sen. You notice the Kijun-sen is not quite as flat as it was last week. It's tipping down just a little bit. It's pretty long way from the Tenkan-sen at 49.66 to the Kijun-sen at 69.75, so it's not really acting as a magnet yet. It needs to really get, price action really needs to get like above maybe 60 for the Kijun-sen above to act as a magnet. Sometimes I like to draw fibs between the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen, and I look for like the 50%. If it gets above 50%, it's going to be more attracted towards the Kijun-sen. Flats in Ichimoku are represent equilibrium, and price tends to be attracted back towards equilibrium. You understand the basic concept of mean reversion. That's what happens. So anyway, moving on to the next chart, we have the ES. Last week we made a new high on the ES, but we were unable to close at the high. In fact, we closed below the high of the last candle. This is a doji candle. There's a potential that we will reverse lower. This is a reversal type candle, but we can't confirm that until we get a lower high and a lower low. So unless we get a lower high and a lower low, we're still in an uptrend, a first time frame uptrend. We are getting a little bit extended above the Tenkan-sen, the Kijun-sen, and the cloud here on the ES, but as you notice, the RSI is not even close to being overbought. So it's possible that we put some more dojis in, go sideways. If we do retrace lower, definitely look for 2044 to act as support. We could have a downtrend and have the Tenkan-sen sort of rising at the same time, and maybe have them meet around here or around here. And I would buy a touch of the Tenkan-sen here for sure. This is a really strong uptrend, but if we do come down that far, and even especially if we go below 2044, I'm not going to be a buyer under 2044. Next up, we have NASDAQ. NASDAQ's still in a strong uptrend. Put in a doji candle also after making a new high. Happened to be a green doji. The high happens to be higher than the close of the last candle, so slightly more bullish in relative terms than the ES. But we do have the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen getting flatter here. So that is more likely to suggest or ask for a little retracement. The RSI is more overbought on the NASDAQ due to the relative strength lately and this very steep uptrend off the lows here. So look for, in order to confirm a reversal, same as the ES, we need to look for a lower high and a lower low. But until then, this chart is fully bullish in Ichimoku terms, so we can assume higher. The TF continued on this nice uptrend. You notice the candles are getting smaller and smaller. And also, like this candle closed on the high, this candle put a little topping tail in, and this candle put a longer topping tail in. So this is a very long-legged doji, I would call it, because of the small body size, we can call it a doji. Made a new high, still an uptrend. So it's possible we could pull back, similar to the last two charts I showed you. a Tenkan-sen should be support at 1189.50 if we do pull back. On this chart, we noticed that, and I mentioned this last week and probably the week before, we do have this cloud twist coming up and this flat area in the Russell, but that's not till April. So we do have, this week we have a slightly lower cloud support, which is something to keep an eye on. Moving on, we have the Dow futures, the YM, another doji, equal top tail and bottom tail, spinning top type doji. We have many dojis. We could make some jokes about my former Twitter handle that I had since 2009. I used to be known as No Doji on Twitter because when I first started trading and sharing my stuff on Twitter, I really didn't like dojis because dojis are neither here nor there. There's nothing to trade in a doji. Moving on, we have gold. After last week's bearish loss of the Kijun-sen support, gold put in some tweezer bottoms and rallied back up towards the Kijun-sen, hit the Kijun-sen and got rejected with a close under the Kijun-sen. So we're still in a downtrend here, but this could be a reversal pattern, a reversal candle for higher. If we do go higher, we have the Kijun-sen at 1219.10 to act as resistance, and then also the Tenkan-sen at 1242.80. It's actually a little bit lower. This little tip up is a little bit of a mistake because I had to do a little photoshopping because I didn't get this chart captured until after the market opened this week. So this would have actually been flat, and it's actually tipped up this week, not last week. Oops. Anyway, if we do go higher, we do have also the Chikou coming into this very bearish candle here. So, you know, if we get above, say, like if we get up to the 1230 level, the Chikou is going to come into the candle and find resistance there. So price should find resistance there as well. And then it will need to break through. It could break through this space right here. So keep an eye on that. Up next we have silver. Silver was great last week. I really enjoyed trading it. We put in a kind of tweezer bottoms, although this isn't much of a tail to call a tweezer. But we reversed that. That's this 16-ish level. I can't tell exactly where it was at the moment. This is a spinning top type doji with a pretty thick candle body, but price was brought up to the Kijun-sen and then rejected from there. So the Kijun-sen will once again provide resistance at 1686. If we go higher, the 17 round number will provide resistance at the flat Tenkan-sen. The flat Tenkan-sen could attract price action. The Chikou has plenty of room to go higher here on silver. I wouldn't be surprised to see some spiky type action. Maybe that goes up to this level, even where these two other candles were sold. So I'll give you a little trading secret about silver, since I trade every day. Silver is really good to fade like rips or dips. You can usually make some ticks off either way. You have to be really careful though, because if the buying is real and not just a flourish, shall I say, you could get smoked. So, but once you have your parameters to deal with, so you'll know if it goes over a certain level that you have to be real cautious and keep your stops in place. Next up we have ZN, the 10-year. We see last week on ZN that we got a reversal higher after we closed above the Kijun-sen, so I mentioned that it was possible that we could indeed get a reversal. I'm kind of surprised that it sold so much lower below the Kijun-sen before it bounced, but that's what happened. And we closed between the Kijun-sen and the Tenkan-sen. So the Kijun-sen will act as support at 127.10. The Tenkan-sen will act as resistance at 128.18. We also have, this is interesting, the Chikou is inside the cloud. So when the Chicago gets up to the top of the cloud here, it's going to find significant resistance. So keep that in mind at this area, like around 127, like a little bit higher from where it is now, like maybe early 128s. We have this dip in the cloud here, this Grand Canyon of sorts. Price action, if it gets below the 127.10 level, again, could be drawn towards this flat cloud down below here. But once we get to this area, which is like the beginning of April, the cloud is going to offer nice support for ZN, so keep that in mind. I'm not charting ZB this week because of the contract change discrepancy made the chart pretty much useless. The continuous contract is messed up for Ichimoku, and the new contract is a huge gap up and doesn't, we can't tell a lot about that. So moving on, we have the dollar. I gave you this really big expanded view of the dollar all the way back to like 2001 when we put in the highs at 121.29. I wasn't trading then. Not trading the dollar anyway. So I thought it was important to fib this area from the highs in back then to the lows in 08 because it happens to be that we were getting hung up at this 50% level of this whole giant span of time. So we're basically flagging here. It's hard to see because this is small in the scale because I included so much time, but we're putting in a bull flag here underneath the 50% level of 96. So the Tenkan-sen is below at 92.96. We could get a retracement lower towards the Tenkan-sen, but it's pointing up, so it's not actually attracting. It looks entirely likely that it's possible that the dollar will break out higher above the 50%, but it could get rejected at the 96 level. We'll see what happens. We do have this nice rising cloud support because we're in this range for quite a long time. This small range between 80 and 85 or thereabouts, and we didn't have an upward sloping cloud, but now we have because of this nice uptrend here, we have a nice upward sloping cloud to act as support if we do get a pullback. Like if we got a pullback even to the 38.2 level, which is a significant level. You see a lot of price action at this level from back in the early 2000s. If we got a pullback down to like 90, 30, 35 area, then at some point in the future we would have cloud support that the dollar could test. Okay, moving on, we have natural gas, a product that I don't trade, but I know many people do and ask my opinion about. Last week we had some fantastic price action to the downside. After testing the Tenkan-sen, the flat Tenkan-sen, we got rejection. It's a classic Tenkan smackdown, but it's not entirely perfect. In Tenkan smackdowns, I like to see the Tenkan-sen pointing down rather than flattening out like this. But the Tenkan-sen did get the job done and rejected price. So the fact that it's flat and the Kijun-sen are flat above indicate that it's possible that it could attract price back towards it. So we're down here in the 272 range. I wouldn't be surprised to see another retest of 296. If this is continues to be bearish, then it might get rejected again lower and make another lower low, or it might just chop around this area. Or if we get some kind of white or black swan events, we could go higher. We do have this gap area here to fill that I forgot to mark on the chart, but there's a potential for filling that gap here, and then maybe a test of the Kijun-sen. That's pretty far away at this point, and price action has been under that level for quite a while. Overall, this chart is fully bearish in Ichimoku terms, and the cloud is getting lower. So as time passes, not for a while, like not till the middle of the summer, the cloud will provide lower and lower resistance. Moving on, we're moving to the grain complex. We're starting off with wheat. Notice last week after this bearish candle, we put in a potential reversal candle, a hammer. So overall, the chart on wheat is bearish, but this is a little, shall we say, green shoot on wheat. If wheat does continue higher, it will find resistance at the Tenkan Sen above here. It could be a good sell point. We do have a bear cross on wheat here. We also have the cloud that will act as resistance. Also, the Chikou will, if we do go higher, will come up here and get tangled up in these candles around the same area that we've seen a lot of sellers come in. So it's possible to enjoy a little ride up with wheat. We need a higher high and a higher low to confirm an actual reversal to the upside. Next up we have soybeans. Soybeans were bullish, more bullish in relative terms than some of the other grains and softs. We have a pretty bullish candle that found support at the Kijun Sen and sold up through the Tenkan Sen and put in just a small topping tail. So we have a nice uptrend still intact. However, we do have the Kijun Sen coming. I'm sorry, the Chikou coming into a candle here, so that's why the buying stopped. If we do go higher, we have a couple of gaps, a couple of important gaps, or large gaps to fill above. The first up one is this thin one here. So if we do go higher, I mean, we have obviously price hasn't been able to get over this 1050 level in quite some time, so that's the first hurdle. If we do get over the 1050 level, I'll be looking for a test of this potential gap fill here on soybeans. But if the Chikou gets through the candles here, it's going to run into the Tenkan Sen and have more issues with that. If it gets through the Tenkan Sen, then chances for the gap fill, this gap fill, are much better. RSI is relatively neutral here on soybeans. Next we have corn. Corn, this is significant. Corn has been trading in this range for quite a while. The last 2 weeks we had dojis that were rejected from the Tenkan Sen. We've had Tenkan Sen rejection for the last several weeks. But last week we actually made it over the Tenkan Sen and then sold but closed above the Tenkan Sen. So as long as price holds the Tenkan Sen, chances are we could go higher, maybe test the cloud. We do have also the Chikou coming into the Tenkan Sen over here. So it wouldn't surprise me if we weren't able to hold the Tenkan Sen and went back to trading in this range. So we'll see what happens with corn there. It's kind of, I mean, it kind of looks like an inverse head and shoulder could be being built. It's not perfect, but if we got back up to this level, I would seriously consider the possibility, especially if we get into the cloud. If we get up to into the cloud and over time get over this flat cloud level, then I would expect a move much higher. Maybe back to this resistance area here around 440. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. That would be kind of a substantial move for corn, which has just been bouncing around this small range. Next up we have live cattle, Ellie. Live cattle made a nice bounce back out of the cloud after losing the cloud, or losing the top of the cloud and ending up in cloud support. When price moves into the cloud, there's support all throughout the cloud. So price action is considered neutral if it's inside the cloud. It tends to attract to flats in the cloud, but otherwise it technically has support. So what's interesting here is the Chikou came down, tested the top of this candle, bounced, and made it over this big green bullish candle and got stuck at the Tenkan Sen. So price is right on the Tenkan Sen here on live cattle. So it'll be interesting to see if it can break over the Tenkan Sen. I would expect it's entirely possible we could head towards the Tenkan Sen here, which is at 156, 113. We do have a rising cloud, and the chart is technically overall bullish, although we are still in a downtrend. Next up, we have lean hogs. Lean hogs had some issues last week. Not quite as bullish as the prior 2 weeks. We put in a doji, a very small body. This is a potential reversal candle. Price could go lower, but we do have the flat Tenkan-sen above and the flat Kijun-sen above, and then the flat cloud above that. So we'll see if we do get buyers coming in and people want to buy some bacon. They can, or some product to make the bacon from. They can think about seeing 71, 78 in the future. But we'll see what happens if we get a lower high and a lower low. That will confirm a potential reversal. We are oversold still on the RSI here, so keep that in mind. Next up, we have coffee. Coffee, after losing the cloud and closing under the cloud last week or 2 weeks ago, continued to be sold very bearishly, and pretty much I think that the only reason it stopped was that the Chikou came into this very thin cloud here. We'll see what happens this week. If the Chikou can hold the cloud, we might put in a small, like a reversal type doji for a move back up, or we could continue selling. If we do lose, if the Chikou does lose the cloud, then support is going to be questionable on this time frame. I would say that we would have to go and look out to the monthly chart for good support. Although we have this, range in this area, in the 120 area, that will definitely act as support also. Next up, we have cocoa. Cocoa has been in a bullish uptrend after breaking back into the cloud and back over the Tenkan-sen. The Tenkan-sen is now tipping up. But we did find resistance at the Kijun-sen, the flat Kijun-sen here, and put in a pretty big topping tail. So we have a potential for a reversal here if we can't get over the 30-34 level. But we would need a lower high and lower low to prove that. The Chikou has more room to go higher up to this Kijun-sen level here and these candles, but there is this space in the candles that the Kijun-sen, the Chikou span can break through. So just a little reminder, the Chikou is one of the most fantastic elements in the Ichimoku system, and you should never remove it from your charts because it is fantastic. It's like your secret weapon. It represents current price action, time shifted 26 periods into the past. So it's just doing exactly what this is doing, but one might wonder sometimes if it's actually that this is doing what this is doing. Okay, moving along, we're moving into some stock charts now. I just did a couple of stock charts this week. I did a lot of softs and grains there, so I only have so much time. You can always ask me on Twitter if you want me to look at something else that I didn't go over this week. So CMG, the burrito. Burrito is a pretty good risk indicator usually. We put in a reversal type candle and then confirmed the reversal last week. Closed underneath the Kijun-sen here. Also, the Chikou is under the candles here. So it's entirely possible that we see some selling with the burrito, some salsa spilling down to the Tenkan-sen area, or maybe just down to this level that this prior candle opened at. But we'll have to see what happens. Obviously, if we get broad market strength, that we'll probably get a reversal higher. If we do get a reversal higher, we have the Tenkan-sen, the flat Tenkan-sen above to attract, and if we get back over the Kijun-sen, the flat Tenkan-sen above will attract price towards the 687.63 level. That should act as resistance, but if we get over that, we could end up testing these highs again. And one more, we end on Google. I had some fun with Google last week. Really some very bullish days adding up to this week. After we got a bounce off the Tenkan Sen, it was pretty clear that we were going higher, and then after we got over the Kijun Sen, even more clear that we were continuing higher. So I mentioned last week I expected it was possible that we could test the top of the cloud here, and I still believe it's possible that we can do that this week as long as we get more broad market support. So we'll see what happens. This is a kind of a significant topping tail, as what happened is the Chikou came and tested the Kijun Sen here. So it looks like it's a little bit above the Kijun Sen. I can't tell exactly where it is, but the Kijun Sen could act as resistance for the Chikou here, and we could do some flagging action sideways. The sideways cloud here sort of suggests that to be possible. You'll notice that we have some very narrow clouds here and then a twist. This suggests a narrowing range. Whenever we see clouds tightening and getting smaller, it suggests that we have a smaller range ahead. So we could do something like put in triangle type action, flag type action here, but it's still quite a ways away from this area. This area is not till April, so it's yet to be seen what we do. But be looking at the top of the cloud to provide resistance around the 580 level if you're trading Google. And that's all I have for this week. I want to wish you the best of luck in trading. I hope that we get some better trading conditions. I say that every week, but as you know, the markets have been extremely choppy and news-driven and challenging, to say the least. So make sure that if you're a newer trader that you are careful. Basically, keep it small and make sure your stops are in place, and that's about it. So thanks for watching. Take care.